Well, I have been told that when I come to a French conference, I should be ready to answer the following question, which is, where is Brian? So I know the answer. Brian is in the kitchen. All right. I live in a very pretty city in the heart of the Alps. I have a great landscape. I'm surrounded by the mountains. It's a Grenoble. Every morning, I do some workout. I do running, even the weather is not very warm these days, but still. And at this moment, it feels like the day starts very well, enjoying the landscape, doing a sport, everything is fine. Unfortunately, that doesn't last long. I check my emails, and then I see that I have plenty of notifications, some of them asking me to give feedback and review some people code, other notifications telling me to improve my code, which I created some pull request, or if you want to call it merge request, whatever you want, and giving me some comments that I should fix. And at this moment, it feels like the day is not going to be fine, and there is a drama about to start. Hi, everyone. My name is Maha. I am an engineering manager at Elastic. I'm leading a team, the release engineering team at Elastic. We provide guidance, framework to the other product team at Elastic, helping them and empowering them to produce releasable artifacts. I worked as a DevOps engineer before that, and I also have a PhD on optimizing performance of multi-tier distributed systems deployed in the cloud. And today, I'm gonna talk to you about how can we have a drama-free code review process. How can we conduct useful code review? I believe that most of you, either you submit code in a shape, in a form of pull request, asking people for a feedback, giving their opinion about what you have created, what you have implemented, or you've been asked to review people code. So at this point, we can say that the code review process has two folds. The first one is submitting and creating pull request, and the second part is reviewing the pull request. Let's have a look at this piece of code. How many of you develop some Python? Just little? Okay, not bad. Around, I don't know, 10% of the people. Regardless the programming language. So this piece of code, it's a method that converts a list to a string. And if I'm being asked to review this code, so it's just 2-3 lines of code, as you can see. So I'm going to start looking at the variables. So I would say that those variables, they don't have meaningful name. They should have, the author should change them and use meaningful names. The second variable doesn't follow the naming convention of variable naming in Python, and I guess that this naming convention does exist for the other programming language. The last comment I'm going to give is about using the join function. So this piece of code actually is not going to work if you have a list where the items in that list, integers and strings. As you can see, 2-3 lines of code, simply I was able to give my opinion at least 3 comments. Finding if the code meeting the standards, the naming convention, and actually the last comment is about finding a hidden corner case in that code is not going to work because there is a use case that's not covered by using only the join function. So simply put, I use my experience and I give my opinion about that code. Let's dig more deeply. And as I have said, that the code review process has 2 folds. The first one is submitting a pull request. So me as a reviewer, if I want to, as an author, if I want to create a pull request or merge request and asking people to give an opinion, I should keep in mind a few things. The first one, When I create my pull request, I should provide a summary describing what's the goal, what's the motivation behind that pull request, what I'm trying actually to achieve. That will give the reviewer a bit of context to understand what I'm trying to do. The second point is I should always ask the right people to review my code. Of course, everybody in the team should review code, and we will see why later. So adding the right reviewers, meaning if I'm submitting a code where I'm trying to solve some security vulnerabilities in my code, so then I need to add people who are expert in security. If I'm trying to solve some performance issues in my code, in my PR, I should ask people who are expert in performance. If I'm modifying a component in our software, I should add all the people that are impacted by my code. So always adding the right reviewer, it's a good practice. Third, I need to comply before submitting my PR with what we call it a PR checklist. So for example, in this checklist, I should always verify if there is a unit test provided and the new code is passing all the unit tests and the existing test and the new test. Here's a story. In my previous company, there was a guy. He submitted his first pull request. He was new. And then there was 0 unit test, 0, literally 0. And then I asked, okay, where is the unit test? It's missing. So I'm not gonna accept this PR. He said, oh no, I've never wrote unit test. My code always work. Simply, yes, I trust you, but I need unit test to accept this PR. I'm gonna talk in more details about the PR checklist in the coming slides. Last but not least, and for me, I call this a golden rule. As an author, a developer, accept feedback, accept comments. And your code doesn't represent who you are. So don't take things personally. And this really a golden rule will save a lot of drama during the code review process. Because plenty of people, I think probably some of you experience that, will take things personally. This is not good at all. Let's move to the second part. So we have seen the author side. Let's see, as a reviewer, what should I look at? How should I conduct useful code review? So first, I should start always by looking at the big picture of that code, understanding what's supposed to do. And thanks to your description as developer, as author, you provide me with a summary about what you are trying to achieve by submitting this piece of code. Second, if there are ambiguity and there are things unclear to me, which normal, I should ask questions, and there will be forth and back between the reviewer and the author to clarify things. Last but not least, also it's very important rule, which is, as a reviewer, it's okay to say, looks good to me. It's not always about finding negative things in the code. So it's fine, don't feel obliged to find negative things. Of course, as long as the code is really meeting the standards and does what's supposed to do, it's fine to say, it's okay, it looks good to me. And I guess all of you see these shortcuts, LGTM and GitHub, GitLab, like it means looks good to me, and you can move forward. Let's dig more deeply in more details. How can we conduct useful code review? Before starting any code review process, as a team, we should agree and we should understand, we should answer few questions. The first one is why. Is why we are conducting this code review. Many people, many developers think that as long as my code works and I wrote the unit test, everything seems fine, so I can move on, merge with the main branch, and there is no need to ask people for reviewing my code. Well, actually, that's not true. Because the goal from code review, we want to get a feedback. We want to check if the code meets the standards and it does what's supposed to do. We want to improve the quality of our code. The reviewers will be able to tell us if there are hidden cases, edge cases that are not covered by our code. We want to participate in putting design, implementing some algorithms. So in this way, we share knowledge, we learn from each other. So in this way, really, the code review is it's not just as a matter like the code works and we can move on. There are plenty of things that really motivate us to do code review. The second question is when. And this question has two sub-questions. The first one, when should conduct code review? Is it while we are implementing the functionalities, the new features of our software? And in this case, we can do pair programming. We can exchange opinions and improve the features, and I can get directly feedbacks. And this is really useful if you have really big functionality and big pull requests. The second part of this question is, when should we consider that the code review process is complete? Is it when all the reviewers agree that this pull request is fine and we can merge it and we move forward? Or is it when all the issues have been raised by the reviewers, been addressed by the author? So that depends. Then we need to know who can be involved in this request. And here I guess that also depends, as usual. So having reviewer, I mentioned before, you need to add the right reviewers. So it depends on what are you trying to achieve from your code, you add the right reviewers. But also keep in mind, adding like tech lead, architect leads, senior people is great. They are experienced people and they are capable to identify issues and hidden cases in our code, hidden bugs. However, if you want to make sure that your code is simple, readable, reusable, adding junior people is perfect fit for that job. So try to include junior people in the code review process. Then we have the where, and here by where I'm referring to the physical place where I conduct the code review process. So it can be, and that depends on the size of your submitted code. It can be through IDE, like plenty of IDEs today you can use, GitHub, Bitbucket, and so on. Those frameworks, or the IDE where if the pull request is small, so I can like pull it locally in my machine as a reviewer, test it, and check if there are vulnerabilities, code smell, or there are any issues. It can be, as we mentioned earlier, pair programming. It can be a video call, and so on. That really depends on the size of the submitted code. The most important question that, as a team, we have to answer is what? What we are trying to do when we do code review, what we are looking for. And this is really very important question. A story, in my previous job, when I joined, so my manager told me, "Hi, Maha, can you have a look at this piece of code?" I asked him, what exactly I'm supposed to look at? He answered, "Make sure it's fine," whatever that means. So personally, what I did, I start looking, based on my experience, and I guess any of you will do the same. Based on my experience, looks at the naming of the variables. They do follow the naming convention in that programming language. Look at the size of the method. Look if there are unit tests provided, and the code passes all the tests, doesn't break any existing tests, and so on. There are plenty of things I looked at based on my personal experience. However, I came up with what we call it, the pull request checklist. And based on my experience, this checklist can be extended. There is no one-fits-all checklist, so you can adapt and customize this checklist based on your team, based on your projects, you adopt it. But the main points, or the key points in that checklist, we can say, check if there is unit test provided. The new code also passes the new test passes also the existing test, doesn't break any of the existing tests. All the dependencies are declared. There is documentation. The syntax and the format of the code is aligned with the syntax and the format of the whole project. And here, me as a reviewer, I guess, that there are plenty of tools that can help us in automating this process, so I don't need to do it manually. For example, on Python, there is a PyLint. There are those linters for any programming language. There is Black, and so on. So there are those tools can help me to check the syntax and formatting. So I don't need it to do it manually, and you can actually integrate it in your CI/CD pipeline. Checking if the new code doesn't introduce any vulnerabilities in this added piece of code. And again, there are tools can do that for me automatically. For example, there's SonarQube. You can integrate it with your CI pipeline, and will analyze your code and will produce reports to tell you what's the code coverage percentage. There are vulnerabilities, there are code smells, there is deprecation in the code, and so on. So there are plenty of tools that can help us and doing this, some of these tasks automatically. So I recommend that we use them. Otherwise, we need to keep in mind that those the key points are in our checklist to do code review. And of course, both reviewer and author, they should agree in this checklist. So me as an author, I should not submit any code if it doesn't align or comply with this checklist. And me as a reviewer, I know what I'm supposed to look at. So that will really facilitate the life of both persons. The last question, so we answered all the question, why, how, and when, where, and what. Now how? How can we really conduct the code review process? And I can give you a list of things that a reviewer and an author should respect. So as a reviewer, you should always make review about the code. So don't criticize the person. Always make your review, your comments about the code itself. Of course, be respectful when you write your feedback. Don't use harsh language. And here there is an empirical study has been done by Microsoft in 2015. It shows that very negative comments were considered useful around 57% of the time. However, more neutral comments were considered useful around 80% of the time. So be respectful. And of course, you should always assume competence. We are one team. We should always provide context. And here for both, as an author, as I said, provide a summary description about your request, what you are trying to achieve. And if you are a reviewer, you should provide guidance, actionable feedback, why you made this comment. Let's have a look at small example as a reviewer. So the reviewer here is saying, why are you using this approach? You are adding unnecessary complexity. However, this is very negative, disrespectful. And I will tell you why. In the second way, which is the proposed way, which is the respectful way, you should rewrite that comment. This concurrency model appears to be adding complexity to the system without any visible performance benefit. The difference between the two reviews, the first one in red, you are criticizing the person. If you can see, you are focusing. You use this approach. You are adding complexity. However, in the second one, you are criticizing or giving feedback about the code itself. And really, it makes a difference. Well, I reached the end of my talk. As takeaway, I see that everybody is awake with me. Nobody fell asleep. This is the most important slide. So remember, always the goal from really the code review is to increase the quality of our code and the overall quality of our software, and not to criticize the people. Always remember, if there are tools can help us to automate some tasks, we should use them. And as I mentioned that, the linters, the SonarQube, and so on. So code review should be, the human review should be doing what cannot be automated. As a reviewer, I don't want to waste my time. And again, respectful review will lead to useful review. Be respectful always when you give your feedback. Last but not least, the golden rule, remember, don't take things personally. Your code doesn't represent who you are. Well, here's the list of references I have used to prepare this talk, and it has been a really pleasure giving this talk to you. I hope that you learned something with me and you're gonna apply it at your company, your team, and your project. And thank you very much for your attention. Last but not least, the slide, you can find them in this slides.com/my name. Thank you very much for your attention.